We are not live. We have recorded due to technical positivity, I should say, being positive. So it's not Rhee, it's me. Rhee always asks everybody questions, and a lot of the people that I've introduced from my life into Rhee's life, when I speak with them in the past couple of weeks, they ask me questions about Rhee, and I thought, why not? Why shouldn't I just interview Rhee and ask him some questions and see how he deals with all of this stuff? Because I can. Rhee, turn on your microphone. Can you hear me?
I can.
Ooh, I like the new look. The new look is good.
I put on this new look because I had a different hat other than a good old baseball hat tonight.
Okay, what I want to ask you, I want to go back a little bit because when we had our conversation with Jody Goodman and Rennie Gold, both you and Rennie spoke about your dad. And I remember Abraham, a little bit when I was a kid, but even the last time you came to visit me in California, we went to go see Tony Robbins, and certain things were coming out, and you started talking about your dad quite a bit with different memories. So tell everybody something about your dad. Like maybe what's the most recent memory? Like maybe you were 9 or 10. What do you remember about your dad?
My father was sort of gangster looking. He carried a gun. He wore that's why I wore the hat, because I knew you were going to ask me about it. He wore a fedora, was much nicer than this. Beautiful lining, had a label on the inside, put on his suit every day, overcoat. I don't even know if some of the listeners will know, but he wore rubbers on rainy days. Do you know what a rubber is?
Yes, both kinds.
Okay, you know the ones that went on your shoes.
Yes.
Yes. That's how my father was. He had a gun on his hip, and he had another gun holster that I remember that was ankle. So I always thought of him when I was growing up as gangster-like, but he really wasn't. Another thing about my father is that he was born in 1909, so he was much older. He was 52 when Rennie and I were born. So he came from an era long before, like, most of the kids my age knew, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I remember you telling me a story about, it was a while back, about candles or something with your dad that had to do with candles, and you were selling candles?
Yeah, okay.
Candles? Yeah.
So my father was a vaudevillian. He was a salesman.
Uh-huh.
His business was when we were born, Rennie and I is what I mean when we were born. He was a theatrical agent. So he had an office in Boston. He booked exotics is what they called them at the time. He booked musicians, he booked comics, he booked clowns. Back then they used to do club dates, and you put together or assemble a set of acts that would entertain for the evening, and Al Gold was one of those agents.
Al Gold, such a producer name.
It was Al Gold, but listen, I'll tell you something that our listeners may be surprised at. His real name was Abraham Goldman.
Mm-hmm. And your real name is Rhee Goldman.
Correct.
James, right?
My middle name is James, and Rhee is the name comes from the premier, I think that's what they called him, of Korea at the time. His name was Sigmund Rhee, and my father saw that name on the news at the time, And he thought that was a cool name if he had a son.
And what's Rennie's middle name?
Rennie is Michael Rennie, who was an actor.
Oh, okay.
And if you look up movies from the 50s and 60s, you will find Michael Rennie in there. I can't tell you was a famous actor, but he was a well-known actor, and my parents gave us what they thought would be stage names.
What is Rennie's middle name? Michael?
Rennie's middle name is Alan, and my middle name is James.
Rennie Allen.
And wait, I know we started with my father, but
yeah.
Here is you asked me my name, you asked me Rennie's name. By the time my mother passed, this was her name: Sherry, Pearl, Bethel, Smith, Michaels, Goldman, Gold, Wallace.
What a woman.
And sometimes when I get called and they say, could I speak to Mr. Goldman? I know it's serious, because no one would know that unless it was serious, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course it does. Go back to the candles and how you were selling them or something.
Okay, so my father was a salesman, and I would go to work with him on...
Wait, when did he become a salesman? Because he was...
No, I meant as a theatrical agent.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. I would go to work. He had an office. It was 120 Boylston Street in Boston. Next door to him was a gentleman who ran a company called Timothy's Candles. Mm-hmm. And he used to stand outside and sell his candles. And he would have a table set up. I can remember he had candles set up like a sun, very hippie kind of candles, all right? Scented candles, interesting shapes. And I used to watch him, and one day he goes, will you cover for me? And I was like he asked me. I used to watch him. I used to talk to him because he was there, and I get bored in my father's office. So I go downstairs and talk to this guy who ran Timothy's Candles. And so he goes, will you cover for me? And I covered for him, and he came back down, and I sold like a lot of candles. I did not know how good I was doing. So he asked me, how much do you come in town? I said, I come on Saturday with my father. He goes, I'll give you, I think it was 20% of the sales.
Yeah.
And I was about 10 or 11, and I stand on the street on Boylston Street, and I yell, Timothy's Candles, scented candles. And people would come over and just buy these candles from this kid.
How old were you?
10, 11. And hear this. My father went to work in his office, which was, a nice office building. And we get in the car after Saturday was over. We drive home. I made $100. My father made $20. And he'd say, you make more money than me. But listen, if you want to talk about that time in Boston, I'll tell you a couple of other stories. Because he was a theatrical agent, he was in a building with other agents. So I remember growing up with all of these like show business agents, and they gather in people's office and they talk about their acts. They talk about fights that happened. Some of them were bookies. It took me a long time to figure out that they were, I'll call it agent/bookie. Not until I was in my 30s did I realize why that guy who booked exotic dancers had 9 phones on his desk in a circle.
He was a bookie gangster.
As a kid, I didn't get it. I think I needed to see my first movie where I saw a bookie and I go, that's what he did. But he also booked exotic dancers. But this is the best. Across from my father's office was a woman. Her name was Petty Dane. And she made professional costumes, but she made costumes also for exotics, is what they called them at And
But when you say exotic, they wore clothes? They were exotic.
they were exotic. And so some would, like, I knew of exotic dancers that were well established, performing a lot, who took off nothing. I mean, didn't reveal anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were good exotics. If you weren't a good exotic, I can't believe that I'm telling you this, that I know this. If they were a good exotic, they didn't have to take it all off. If they were not a good exotic, they had to take it off.
Kind of like a great dancer and a not so great dancer?
Yeah. Yeah, you could
Yeah,
leave them wanting more. Okay, how do we get the, oh, so Petty Dane was her name. She made these costumes and she made pasties for strippers. Will now give some answers as to why Rhee and Rennie is so crazy. We used to get 50 cents. They're made out of buckram is the material, and then you put some material on the inside to make it softer, and on the outside to make it softer. But the original base is buckram,
Yeah.
cut in like a triangle that fits. And Rennie and I used to get 50 cents a pair for every one that we made.
Everybody's been an entrepreneur since day one.
So I want to say that. I think about that often, that my parents gave us money for school, gave us money. Like I remember what they used to send home, you could buy books from school.
Yeah.
They buy those books, they do that stuff, but if we wanted something, we had to work and make the money.
Yeah.
And
Working back, especially working, was not a punishment. It was actually just something that you wanted to make your own money. I agree with that. Tell me the one thing, if there is, think about one thing that you could honestly say that you learned from your dad, from Abraham, that you've taken with you, aside from work ethic, because I think that would be.
I think he had a really strong work ethic, pretty much 6 days a week. I think what I took from him in my career is his ability to understand that you had to entertain. It wasn't how many pirouettes that you could do or how high you could jump. He came from a world where you could, if they said to you, can you MC tonight? You said yes.
Yeah.
If they said, can you tell a few jokes tonight? You said yes. Okay, so for him, Rennie and I would accomplish some sort of dance movement. But to him, my mother would get excited about that. To him, he'd go, I want to be entertained. And so I feel like I got from him something that maybe other kids my age didn't get, was a push toward, you got to entertain people.
Yeah.
You don't just have to have that leg in passe and lifted because you're going to be judged by somebody. You must also learn to entertain. I think I learned that from him.
Are you able right now to show some of the pictures that you've showed me from your dad? I mean, I know this was weeks ago. Remember some of the things that you showed? Can you do that right now, or am I putting too much on you?
No, I think that I can. Hang on one second, because I want to see if I can pull this off. Share screen. I am going over here. Tell me, can you see? Not yet.
No, not yet. I see something.
Okay, what do you see?
Oh, I see it now. Who's that?
Hang on, let me make this even better to view. Slideshow.
That's so cool that you have these pictures. How do you have these pictures? Who gave them to you?
I got them from a cousin, a second cousin, not too long, less than 5 years ago. I hope you can still see this, but it's loading up. Okay, so listen, this is a story about this man. His name is Jacob Goldman. He was born in 1869 in Rovno, Russia. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Which was 4 years after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, and that is my grandfather, and he is 5'2", by
Ah, you and Rennie got some height on that one.
yes, we did. I'm 5'9". My father was probably 5'6", so you can see that we've been working hard on bringing.
On stretching.
But look at this. So
Aw.
this is my grandmother, born in. Hang on, it says this 1890. She was born in 1890. So do you notice that there is 1869? There's a 21-year difference between my grandparents.
Ha, same as your mom and dad.
They were 26.
Mm.
So this guy was born over 150 years ago. And that has always intrigued me.
Was it a picture of your dad?
That is my grandfather. That's my dad's father, and that's
Right. I'm just asking you the picture of your dad. Like maybe with you and your dad and Rennie. Oh no, that's not your dad. Is it?
This one right here is my dad. I don't know who this gentleman is. I wish I did.
Rabbi Goldman.
Yeah, that's there were a long line of rabbis, though my father was not very religious. But this one right here is my father.
Okay.
This is Uncle Nate, and this is Aunt Ruth. And I had another uncle that I don't believe had been born yet. I'm going to go past this. I know you'll be interested, but it'll take us to some other pictures that are really cool. This is my father, age 15-ish. And those are the dancers that he danced with. And Nancy, as you know, like
Yeah.
the Sherry Gold dancers, 70 years after this, was Rennie and I with a bunch of girls that we danced with. When I found the picture, I was like, wow, look at that. So if he was born in 1909, and this is...
I love the shoes. I love the shoes.
Oh, yeah. This is the 20s, right? This is, I would say. And here's some things on my father that I think are kind of cool. This is 1927.
Al Gold and John Gale.
Al Gold and John Gale, those speedy tappers, they're on this bill. Over here, it's Al Gold, and it's, I guess it's just a different show bill. That's 1927. So if you're born in 1909, you're 18. And he was the speedy tapper. Over here is Al Gold, the dancing marvel. And I love this. Can you see this? This adults 40 cents, children 20 cents.
Yeah.
And look, when you went to the show, you didn't just see Al Gold, the dancing marvel. You saw Catherine Wagner, the blues singer. You saw... This is May Rogers foursome rhythm dancers. You got all that for 40 cents. Let's see.
You have any of your dad?
I do, I think. That's him.
You and Rennie look a lot like him.
Do you think so?
He looks like she'd be fun to drink with.
It's funny that you should say that because her name is Primrose. And Primrose and Golds were an act. They were married. Okay, my father was married in the 20s. And she became a severe alcoholic, and that caused them to get divorced.
Well, clearly from this picture, she was on her way.
But what he used to say was that they played these characters, and then she ended up
Like,
drinking so much that she was the character. But when they started, they weren't.
huh,
And listen, when my father passed away, I have a couple more things. When my father passed away, I called the number, a number in his phone book that
yeah.
said Primrose. Okay. And so now they've been divorced for years, but he still had her number in his book. So I called and I said, "Hello, is this Primrose?" And she said, "Is this AB?" And that's what they called my father. His name was Abraham. They called him AB, his family.
What'd you say?
I said, "No, it's not AB. It's AB's son." And we had a great conversation. And hear this, because we just talked about the alcoholic part. This is true story. She became president of Alcoholics Anonymous eventually.
Atta girl.
We talked.
Why not?
I sent her a Christmas card the following year. I got one from her, and then the next year I sent her one and it said deceased.
Hmm.
So I got to communicate. I don't know if you can see these pictures here, but this right here is my father in the 30s performing at Calissimo's Theater Restaurant. And there was some sort of, hang on, I got to look at these notes. It was some sort of like gangster something that happened.
Well, you already told us he was packing, so I get it.
Yeah, he was packing. Here's some more about him. I don't want to share these with you. I want to share them another time because they're my.
Keep saying.
That's my mother and father getting married in
Oh,
1961.
look at Sherry.
She's 25. He's 51.
Respect.
Ooh, I want to stop at that one. Hang on. This is the family. This is my great grandmother. We called her Little Granny.
Uh-huh.
See Tony's face here?
He has a same face now.
And this is Uncle Phil, my mother's brother. I mean, my father's brother. This is my grandmother on my mother's side. This is Aunt Fran. This is my father, mother, Aunt Ruth, Uncle Nate, and everyone in this picture.
Listen, Uncle Nate looks like he popped a few back as well.
You know, wait, I want to say something about that. You know how people want to ask their relatives questions later on, like you weren't paying attention?
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions about Uncle Nate. It's funny you noticed that.
Look at his stance.
He was the nicest guy. I'm going to bring this down for a second and say this about Uncle Nate.
Wait, what's that?
Okay. All right. We'll do this. Hang on. And I'll talk about it. Give me 1 second.
I think I know what it is. Because my sister Patty used to dance there.
Yes. Why are you seeing anything?
No, but I saw that house, and I think it was the house that you guys grew up in, and it was where your mom taught out of the basement, right?
Yeah. Give me a second. Oh, I'm jumping around, Nancy, but this is a picture that was signed by Joe Louis, who was a famous fighter,
Mm-hmm.
Bill Robinson, who was Bojangles. I think it's Harry Mansell that was the fighter. People are going to laugh because I don't know. But in 1942, they gave this picture to our friends Primrose and Gold.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Louis, Henry Mansell, and Bill Robinson. And I always loved that because my father had a picture from Bill Robinson, Bojangles.
Didn't you dance to that once? Or was that Rennie?
No, I did dance to that once. You have a really good memory.
No, I don't. But certain things pop up when I see things.
Okay,
But I was thinking about when you showed that picture of your mom's place where you guys grew up, and she was teaching out of the basement. I know my sister Patty took dance lessons there. And then I was thinking, like, I remember a story about somebody that jumped off. Didn't you jump off the roof or something from that house?
I jumped out a window.
Oh,
Oh,
wait, go back. Oh, okay. There it is.
here it is. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see
The
how.
first you jump off the roof, it was a window.
Oh, I lost it. Hang on.
It's okay. Just tell the story.
I will, but I could be. I think I can show you more of it. Hang on. Slideshow from current slide. Okay, so as this comes up, I'm not so. In a minute, ask me what that variety stuff was about. First, I'll stop here, Nancy, because
Oh, I know who those boys are.
okay, so that is,
Which one is you?
I believe I'm on the left. And why do I say that? Because my mother was really the only one who could identify us. And when I asked her, she'd say, "You were bigger, you were chubbier in the cheeks." So that's what I look for, but I can't make guarantees.
Look at Rennie's looking the other way, like, yeah, I got this. I'm good.
But I'll tell you a factoid about these two people. This is my father, as we said, born 1909. This is my grandfather. So that's my mother's father. He was also born in 1909. So you have the father and the grandfather holding the children, and they're exactly the same age, which I always thought was an interesting fact.
Such is love.
So this is the first studio, the first Sherry Gold Dance studio your sister took in it.
Mm-hmm.
People were looking and saying, "Where was the studio?" You'd go in this front door here, you go down a set of stairs, and there was a basement. And we lived in this top part, 3 bedrooms, ranch house, and that's where it all began.
What window did you jump out of?
On the side of this house over here is the second story window. If you really want to hear this, you have to hear this story. All right.
Why did you jump out?
Okay, so my mother had a neighbor friend who also had a couple sons. Maybe they had 3 sons. Dana, Jeffrey, and Kenny. And so those kids would come over our house, and that woman would be the secretary, and my mother would be teaching, and the 5 of us would be upstairs. And we were watching Batman. And Jeffrey and I decided to put on capes. I put on my mother's go-go boots to just finish off the outfit.
Of course.
We hang out of a window. He decides to climb back in. I can't get back in. I fly out the window with the cape on, my mother's go-go boots, past the window of the studio for the register, like where the parents sat. And I landed in a snowbank. And my mother came out and said, "Take those go-go boots off now."
That was it. Are you okay? Didn't exist.
No, there was none of that. I have to stop this here. There was none of that. Are you okay? There was like, this is how my mother felt that day. And I get it now because I'm an adult who thinks like my mother. You jumped out a window, you're wearing boots, you interrupted my class, and I'm not checking to see if you're okay. I'm getting you back in the house out of my go-go boots and getting myself back to class.
Wait, no, when you say class, was it you? Was it Rennie that was trying to get to the studio, Brockton studio, and hit a parked bus?
Rennie. Okay, Rennie. This one's for you. Um, This is how I believe it to be. We might have to be corrected one night by Rennie, but this is how I believe that one to be. He's at home, supposed to have a private lesson with somebody,
Mhm.
and he falls asleep. They call him, they say, Rennie, you're late for your lesson. He gets in his car, he starts driving to the studio, which was 4 miles from the house in Randolph to the studio. And a bus was parked there, and Rennie was tired, and he just slammed into the parked bus. And he never made that kid's private lesson.
He probably did. We don't know.
No, maybe he did, but for whatever reason in my head, I think it was a pretty serious crash. Oh my God, I can't believe that you remember that. I,
I remember the stories, getting to know you guys when I was, getting older and just hearing the things that you and Rennie, went through, and then things with your mom. I mean, well, because she was definitely my second mom. Everybody knows that. What do you remember about your mom? What do you think it is about your mom that you've taken with you moving forward after she went to heaven?
I took so much, but I guess I'll go to early stages because there's probably, or early life, there's probably people who wouldn't believe some of the things that I know about her in early life. My mother wanted the Leave It to Beaver lifestyle when she first got married. She thought she was out of show business. She had no intention of teaching. And she was encouraged by a neighbor. We'll talk about that story sometime. But my mother was very domesticated. I remember growing up, and we had dinner every night at 5 o'clock. I'm assuming it was breakfast. My mother baked. My mother made recipes, and she
Rennie
made
made something the other day. Remember, she made tuna casserole.
yes.
Yeah, Rennie made it the other day. I saw it on some social media or something. It made me laugh because I remember she made that.
Oh, and she made like the best pork chops. She made pies. She made all kinds of things. And listen, through her whole life, she continued, but it was limited to Thanksgiving and Christmas, which some of our listeners might be going, well, your father was Abraham
Right,
Goldman.
what happened to Passover? Oh well.
That's another story. I'll tell it real fast. Um, my father was brought up Jewish. They spoke Yiddish in his household. My father spoke Yiddish to his brothers and sisters. I never learned Yiddish, but I would hear them say Rhee or Rennie in the middle of their Yiddish sentence. And you knew they were talking about you because it wasn't a Yiddish word for your name.
Probably not something positive, I imagine. You guys were in trouble.
Sometimes when my mother and father were splitting up, I heard a lot of sherries in the middle of Yiddish conversation. But what was the original question?
About your mom. What do you remember about your mom? What have you taken with you as far as something that
Oh,
you?
so for her Christmas, lots of decorations. We made ornaments. We made lights around the windows. Christmases were big for her. Anything that was sort of, I guess you call it a little theatrical, if people had a green Christmas tree, she had a white one with purple ornaments and
Yeah,
purple.
shiny and sparkly. Anything shiny and sparkly. And you
Yeah.
guys would always have the studio Christmas party. Remember that? I remember the first time I was able to be invited to that. It was just everybody was there.
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah. I miss those days. And the people, we had such awesome people. We were a family. We still are a family.
yeah.
But yeah, good times, good days. So
We had to switch it to one thing because I just had a flashback. when we talk about things like the people that I looked up to, there was like Randy Solon, Audrey Albert. Gosh, there's so many of them.
They'll be excited that you remember them.
Oh yeah,
I
well,
still,
I remember Brandy coming out of a trash can for some number or something. Do you have a dime? And I was like, oh, I want to be her. And Audrey was so great. There were so many people. They were the best. Gosh, I know their names too. Doesn't come to my brain right now. But you did a number and you put me in it with that higher level. And we did Nights in White Satin. Remember when you choreographed that? And we worked so hard on that. Carrie Wenzel, right? Is it Carrie Wenzel?
yeah, Carrie Wenzel, nicest girl I ever taught.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that whole
If she's listening out there, she was the sweetheart. She just went with the flow. She had a smile all the time. She had the best mother. I think about her a lot. I don't know what happened.
when you had us do, so you invited me into this number. I think it was myself and Natalie Carmoletti that were in my age level at that point. We're invited to this number and we're working with the sheet and running around and doing all this stuff. And then it was Carrie, because you were like, okay, somebody's going to have to jump over this. And Carrie was like, well, I know that she's younger, but it should probably be Nancy. And I remember thinking like, don't put me in that position. Let me petrify, because these were all the people that I looked up to so much. And we only did it once, right? We did it once and it was great. I think we attempted a second time?
This is what happened. We did it once. It was spectacular.
Yeah.
Okay. It won awards. I think if I
felt that way, though. I felt that way, being a part of it, working so hard to catch this and jump this and do this and all the in-betweens. It was those moments that I think everybody needs to be reminded of too when it comes to competition or whatever it may be. When you come off that stage and you're all together and you all look at each other like, oh, we pulled it off and it was good. That feeling that you have, it didn't matter what we got. I know that we won, but wow, did we work our butts off on that. And you were strict. You weren't always nice.
No, I knew what I wanted, and I had thought about that piece of choreography for a long time. But again, we were late on it, which you and I have talked about before in another interview. I never was really early on choreography. Like a good 48 hours before performance was about my average.
Which was great. It taught us something different than your mom and different than running and everybody else that was under that umbrella. I mean,
that's true, but I want to finish out this Nights in White Satin thing. So it did really well. Then I was running a convention and I asked you guys to come to the convention in Connecticut to do this award-winning piece. And you guys tripped over the sheet. Somebody's leg got stuck in the sheet. And I was like, wow, how could some award-winning number ever come like this in like a 3-week period?
Yeah.
So now I look back and I think how lucky we were that very first.
Yeah. Oh, I think we knew it the second time too. I think that's the time when you come off stage, you're like, how was it? Like for me, looking up to everybody else, being the younger, looking up like, how was it? And I think it was Audrey that was always the mouth that would be like, yeah, not so great, guys, not so great.
No, I think somebody slipped on the material. I think it was not that good. Let's move to something else. Ask me another question. What'd you just say?
Leslie Nightingale.
Another name, yes. She was in that.
Yep.
Yeah, so those days were, I think, for me, days of feeling my oats, days of like, as a choreographer, my mother might not have chosen Nights in White Satin, or somebody else might not have at that time. And because I was younger, I went for things and I went for the material and I went for like as much as I could.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand why you wouldn't. Now I do.
That's life, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know that I told you all I wanted to tell you about my father. I'm going to tell you a couple of other things about him before we.
What do you remember about Sherry and your dad being together?
I know people will think this is strange, but for the first 10 years of our lives, I feel like it was very 60s husband and wife.
Yeah.
There were 3 kids. I have an older brother, Tony, who my father adopted.
Yeah.
We were like sit down every day, have dinner. My father went off to work every morning. Our lunch money was laid out on the kitchen table. It changed when we were 10. But those first years, my parents were very much going to all the school meetings and doing all those things.
Did you have a best friend outside of? I mean, you have built-in brothers, so those will always be best friends whether you get along or not. I mean, that's just the way that it is. But did you have a best friend, like even in high school?
Well, I'll go earlier than that. Our neighborhood had lots of families. Like one family had 7 kids. One family had 3 kids that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. There were so many kids around. If you said who was your best friend growing up, or at least till I was like 11 or 12, it would have been a kid named Jeffrey Myers, who was one of 3 brothers, Jeffrey, Kenny, and Dana Myers. And by the way, Jeffrey Myers was the kid I almost jumped out the window with. He chickened out.
You went first.
Jeffrey Myers was still up there and acted like he didn't know why Rhee jumped out the window, like he had no part of it. So if Jeffrey Myers is listening, I haven't forgotten.
Probably a lawyer.
Yeah.
Out that window.
I want to say something else about that as a kid, because I think it was important to me, and I look and I'm not sure kids get it now. We would go into the woods, the neighborhood kids, and you would like find a tree that was down, and that would become a submarine, and everybody was like on a submarine, and you used your imagination. That's what I remember about being a kid in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
I don't know that kids get that chance, you know. We were in the woods. We were getting dirty. We were riding our bikes beyond where our parents told us we could.
Yeah. Some kids, I think, are still able to do that in certain neighborhoods, but that is true. What's the story about? Was it you or Rennie when your mom had what was the name of the street that the studio was on with the basement?
Martindale Road.
Martindale Road. Who was the one that locked himself in the bathroom? Was it you or was it Rennie? Right? Something about that?
Yeah. So what happened there was Rennie, I have to tell some other things that I did because Rennie's going to feel like we're picking on him tonight.
No, I don't remember. I don't always remember if it's you or him.
Rennie told my mother he wanted to clean her car. Okay. And so he needed the keys. It was a blue station wagon. So he starts the car. He starts pressing the gas, pressing the brake, like going back and forth in the driveway. Now, hear this. He's doing this while parents are waiting for their children in front of the house. So these parents are watching this, I think, 10 or 11-year-old kid in this car. I don't know why somebody didn't run in the house, but they didn't. And all of a sudden, Rennie just hits the gas for whatever reason.
Because he already hit a bus. No, so I said that was later.
Over a hill, okay, and comes down and goes into the woods and is bouncing. Now I'm watching this. I'm a little kid. My brother is 10. He's driving this vehicle that's crushing these trees. And finally, it slams between 2 trees. Okay, so now my mother's car is like squished, the whole front end is squished in like this. Rennie gets out. Now, this is how a young mind thinks. This is a great story. I haven't told it in years. He gets out and he tries to push the car like out the. And when I saw him do this, I'm the twin. The twin always gets blamed for what the other twin does. So I'm watching him push this car and I'm like, I can't get in trouble for this. Hear this. I ran and ran and ran. And to this day, I can feel the breeze running through my head to try to get miles away from the house. So I wasn't even going to be in sight of what Rennie had just done. But wait, what happened was this. When he realized he couldn't push that car up, he ran into the studio bathroom and locked himself in for a day and a half. So my mother had clients coming down and they couldn't use the bathroom because her son was too scared to come out of the bathroom.
When did he finally come out?
The next day. And the only way he could come out was that if they assured him that he was not going to get beaten to a pulp. He was.
Ronnie's not even here to defend himself. Oh my God.
Now hear this, because this is good for the teachers who are listening. My mother managed to teach. My mother managed to teach through all of this, okay? Rennie and I would get off the school bus and run and hide in the woods. So now she's supposed to be teaching at 3:30. We're supposed to be in that class, and we never came home. Because we didn't want to take the class. I'm telling you these stories because I feel bad now.
You can't feel badly about that now. Oh, so many good stories.
Yeah, and when you say so many good stories, I wouldn't change a thing. I know I started off with my father being older than my mother. And people have asked me before, well, did that have an effect on you? Or how long did your father live? And this is what I want to say on that. I think when I was in my 20s and my father got sick, he was gone by the time I was 25. I wished I had a father like everyone else because all my friends still had them. But now, I know what I learned from this man who had this whole history that so many other kids' fathers didn't have.
Right.
And I am that, as I grow older, I see my father, Al Gold, in me, the person that I have become.
Yeah. And it's beautiful that you recognize that. Even when you showed me the picture with you and Rennie, and you got the resemblance is just, there's just so much there. And I remember meeting him a couple of times when I was a kid.
Do you remember him?
Yeah. I remember the thing. Was that a sneeze or a cough?
That was a cough.
Oh, God bless you anyway. I remember how sad you and Rennie were when he went to heaven. I remember that as a kid, sort of being in the studio and hearing from maybe Mary Lee or anybody else that was in the studio at that time. But I remember that it was really tough on you and Rennie. I remember that.
This is what was tough about that. We were 20 when he got sick. My parents were split up by that time. So my father didn't have any kids previous to us. He ended up with 3 children because he adopted my older brother, Tony.
Yeah.
And so he had 3 sons. But Rennie and I landed in the place of being responsible for him at age 20.
Yeah.
You can remember my brother, Rennie? working to get him on Social Security so that we could get him into a nursing home because he had suffered a stroke. I can remember going to work a job in Michigan and calling my father because they had let him out of the hospital before we had left. And my father didn't answer the phone. So I called my aunt, and he had had a second stroke now and it was on the floor for a day or two.
Mhm.
And that was hard for 20-year-old guys to go through. And that went on for 5 years. They would call us. We had the Boston studio. And they'd call us. We'd get a call 7 o'clock at night, maybe 2 years into this. And they'd say, he's not going to make it through the night. You need to come within an hour.
Mhm.
And we would go sit. Sometimes he could talk, know that he wasn't always,
Right.
he could have conversation. And he'd make it. And that went on for 5 years. By the time it took until we were 25 that he finally decided that heaven was where he was headed. Tough for
Yeah.
young people. So if you said, do you regret having an older father from the lessons you learned? Absolutely not. Are there regrets in having to deal with that at such a young age? Yes. That
But
was
but you probably wouldn't be the person you are today if you didn't go through that.
correct. And to this day, I'm very understanding of older people. I always felt like I had an understanding
Yeah.
different from my friends because I understood it. That's all.
What do you feel like at this point? What's your biggest accomplishment so far?
Hmm. My biggest accomplishment isn't what people might think. It's not the competitions that I ran that were really large, some of the largest ever. Not the conferences. I think it's the people who believe in my philosophy and who I've kind of taken responsibility to guide along the way, and it's worked.
So being a mentor, basically.
Being a mentor for sure. That's only happened later in my life. The last 3 or 4 years, having an opportunity to work as closely as I do with studio owners and on a personal level as well. My greatest satisfaction is watching somebody that didn't have enough confidence in themselves to maybe stand up in front of a group, and they're smart people,
Mhm.
and express that. And by working with them for a period of time, 6 months later, everybody's looking to them for advice because they just made this huge turnaround.
Yeah.
That's huge accomplishment for me.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one.
I'm grateful for it all. You know, I do conferences that have had a lot of people. I do a retreat center that was a unique thing. But like you, Nancy, you're never quite satisfied, if you know what I mean. You always wonder what's next, and that might not be a good quality, but we come from the same place, so I figure that you'll get that, right?
Yeah. If you could go back in time and change anything, not dance really anything, if there's something that do you ever think that you could go back in time and fix something or twist something, what do you have anything like that? What would it be?
That I focus more on relationships, personal relationships,
Yeah.
instead of this is how I lived. I've kind of changed in the last couple of years. Maybe as we continue to talk, I'll open up about those things. was always good at this thing that's hard to describe that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's teaching, motivating, dance competitions,
Work,
conferences,
work.
work. I was always good at it, and I could come up with a strategy to make it work. I still can. I was not good at relationships. So at a very early age, not always, because I'd always go back and give it a shot once in a while. I gave up on that because I felt like it hurt too much.
Mm.
It distracted me too much. It made me not be able to stay focused on this thing that I was good at.
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, if I had a regret, it would have been that I didn't work harder at that at an earlier time, if that makes sense.
That's very honest. Very, very vulnerable. Wow, we're not even drinking. Vulnerable of you as well. What else do I want to ask you? What's your favorite word?
I think the word I use the most is passion. It's just out of my mouth all day. I have to stop myself and say, Rhee, come up with a better word.
But you're known for because.
Yeah, because
Like Christine knows that. She's not even in the business at all.
I'm getting like emails or people saying,
What's
for
your
those
least?
of you who are wondering, that's how I think of the next question. I'm going to try to do it more silent.
No, you're known for it. It's good. It's kind of like enjoy the journey. Everybody knows. Do you know Rhee Gold? Oh yeah, the guy that always says enjoy the journey. It's great. You know, I mean, Ellen DeGeneres has be kind to one another, and you have enjoy the journey. So it's good. It's all positive. What's your least favorite word? Like something that you hear that makes you like how people feel like when there's fingernails on a chalkboard. If somebody says something, it could be a word or a phrase that you don't like. It doesn't resonate with you.
I can't. Pisses me off, and that I know that's offensive to some people. I always forget. In New England, that's not
It's
offensive,
fine.
but in different parts of the country or world, it might be. Yeah, I always like, let's say I'm doing a seminar
Yeah.
and somebody comes up with a brilliant idea and they express it in the room, and there's somebody else on the other side who goes, yeah, but what if this happens? That's so hard for me. I look and I say, before we get to, I don't know if I'm staying on track with your original question.
You know, just a least favorite word or even phrase, but you basically
It's I can't, or I'm afraid of that, or I can't do that, or you're so quick to judgment that that'll never work for me.
yeah.
I don't like that. I like, that's an interesting idea. That piece won't work for me, but this piece might. And by closing it off, you lose it all. I don't know. Did I make sense with that, Miss
Yeah,
Stacy?
absolutely. When you were saying that, it reminded me, I remember talking to you or venting to you about something about my schedule. My schedule was packed and I was going a little bit frantic about it. And you were like, yeah, but look at all the things you have to look forward to. And it just put me in this place where it's very true because I'm capable of doing this and how lucky I am to have these projects and be able to work the way that I do. And I know that you do that for, a lot of people. A lot of people you do that for, which is, it's a very good thing. We all have to be there for each other, especially during these interesting times in life.
I want to say that about these interesting times in life. You didn't ask me this question, but I'll answer it.
I'm sure everybody expected you to take over the interview at one point, so go ahead.
I don't want to. I really want to hear your questions, but this is what I say about the times we're in. And I know that some people will think that I'm not taking this as seriously as they are, or they have different responsibilities, which is what I understand. I look at this as opportunity. I can't see this as the end of anything. I can only see it as, okay, here is the new world, and here are 3 great ideas that I could do in this new world.
Yeah. I think it would be good if everybody could think of 3 great new ideas, but I think everybody's in a different boat, and I'm going to go back to another place because I think, everything that you've been talking about is positive, and anybody that's watching you, nobody really wants to think about reality right now because it's not fun.
Okay, where do you want to go?
What have you been watching on Netflix?
I started to watch the Hasidic. You
Unorthodox.
say that again?
Unorthodox?
Yeah, I really like that. I've only seen an episode and a half.
Yeah.
I know everybody else has seen this, but it took me till this year. Schitt's Creek.
Yeah. April Nelson.
April Nelson. That
I'm thinking I saw it and I started watching it the other day because April posted it. It's good, April.
one of the best. I like crime. I like royal history or British history, U.S. history.
You and Rennie have always been History Channel buffs, always.
Yeah, I can't get enough of it. Like if you said to me at night, I go to YouTube a lot because I can find more options that relate to my interests. And like I'll sit there and watch, the history of Henry VIII and his third wife. And I have friends who come by and say, "What are you watching?" I go, "Oh, I love this." And I don't know why I do, but I love it. And that's new in my life. That's like 3 or 4 years old.
What's something that you've actually cooked that you haven't done before? Anything new?
Tuna casserole. I know Rennie made one. I made one the other day. But I have been making like fish, things that I don't normally cook.
Mm-hmm.
And I cook every day. I'm surprised. But this is what I'd say about that. And I'm sure other people who are listening may feel this way too. I was really on a healthy binge for about 2 years. Now, if it's 10 o'clock at night and I open the refrigerator and that peanut butter cookie dough is appealing, I turn the oven on 350 and I make 6 of those cookies.
That's honest. Everybody can relate to that. Did you ever have somebody?
In the old days, believe it or not, when I was doing good, I might have cut a piece of cantaloupe off.
In 2018?
Okay, next question.
Let's think back to when you were, before you started doing seminars and the retreat center and everything. Can you think about any, a student that was one of yours that pops to your mind? I know there's a lot, but like one of your favorite female students that you loved working with.
3.
Good. Who?
You know them all. Christina Day. Did you know Christina Day?
Yep.
Melissa Fideli.
Marissa
Fideli. That's how much I loved working with her. But she knows I love her.
Everybody loves Marissa.
And Sherilyn.
Yep.
And if you ask me why my most memorable pieces and why I loved working with them, especially Marissa and Sherilyn, they do anything I ask them to do. Sherilyn once danced to Tambourine Man, and it was this 60s version of it that I don't know that she could totally relate to. And there was a point where like 30, not 30, that's an exaggeration, 10 seconds She laid on the floor, and all I wanted her to do was lay on the floor and drag the tambourine across the floor. And it made enough noise, okay, for it to make the impact I wanted. And she'd say, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And I go, "No, it's perfect." All right. And she'd get that, like at the end of her choreography with that tambourine. It was just this final drop of it.
You know what I remember that I always loved was the trio that you did, but it was Marissa, Sherilyn, and Summer.
Right? With fire.
Great moment for. I just remembered all of them going, mine, mine, mine. And they were all, the three of them together were just so sweet. And
why they were so good to choreograph for, because you'd walk in with ideas. You know that mine, mine, mine part? Yeah. They did it.
I know.
You'd turn around and they'd just be making fun. And I'd go, stop. Do that again. And they go, no, you don't want that. I go, yes, I want that.
And it was like everybody's favorite moment. And all their faces would light up because it was just something silly that they were doing. Yeah, that was great.
That was the best choreography. Nick Bagger, one time, I choreographed Bohemian Rhapsody. And there's a point in the song where everybody was in a group and it was kind of serious. And then the music goes, Alleluia, Alleluia. And he jumps up like an idiot in the middle of this very serious part going, Alleluia, Alleluia. And I looked at him, I go, I'm pissed because you didn't take me seriously, but that's in. That's perfect.
Bagga, I love you when I come across other dancers working with them. Somebody will say something about Nick Bagga, and I go, you mean Baggahead? And everybody knows him by Baggahead. He's another sweet face.
These people who are listening may not know. It's Nick Bagga. Grew up in Boston or in my brother's studio, and now is an LA dancer.
Yeah. Bernie's boys. Got a lot of them. All right, what else? How much more time do we have?
We have about 2 or 3 minutes. Got some final questions?
I do. Let me think. Tell me something that is great about being a twin and something that is not so great about being a twin.
I think the great part about being a twin, especially when I was younger, you had someone to play with. Though we grew up in a neighborhood with a lot of kids to play with.
Yeah.
But you had somebody to get into trouble with. Like I remember Rhee and I a Christmas never went by where we didn't know what we were getting.
What do you mean?
It was probably 7 when we realized there was no Santa Claus, because Rhee and I began the search for the presents around the day after Halloween. And if my mother put them in the trunk, we found them. If she put them in the closet, we found them. If she put them in the attic, we found them. So when you had a twin, you had to look out.
Yeah.
Let's say my mother went out and it was time to look, because we heard bags the night before. We were asleep, but we heard bags coming into the house. So we would strategize, and Rhee would go to the front door and wait for my mother, or she'd be teaching downstairs, and he'd yell while I looked through the closet for this stuff. And we'd always wake up in the morning, right? And my mother would talk about Santa Claus, how Santa Claus ate the cookies, my mother would say. But we knew, and we'd play the game.
So you were 25.
I'm so glad she's not here to know this. I mean, I can remember going into a closet and all of our presents falling out, and we had these Snoopy Snoopy banks we were getting. And mine fell, or I don't know whose it was, but one of them fell out of the closet and broke, and we just put it back in the closet.
Why not?
Why not?
Is there any down? Is there anything that you feel like that sometimes is
down about the twin thing.
Yeah. Or difficult, or yeah,
I think people compare twins.
yeah.
I think people expect two twins to be a lot alike. And in our case, we're not as much alike as people think, though we do look alike.
Mhm.
So yeah, there are times I think it's harder for Rennie sometimes because this is something he once said to me, and I kind of felt bad about it. But I was the president of Dance Masters of America, and it was while I was the president, and he was there with his dancers. They were participating, and there were people who wanted to talk to me, the president, weren't happy with me or whatever. And Rennie get on an elevator and they'd start complaining to him. And he'd go, "Oh no, I'm not Rhee." And I feel like a lot of times in his life he's had to do that.
I'm not Rhee. That's good.
And I do feel bad for that part because I put myself in positions where a lot of people have opinions. And they like to express them when they get the chance, and Rennie's heard many.
Okay, what's the once the curve has flattened and there's things that are, of course, every day being a little bit more positive, what's the first thing you think you might do?
Oh, beach, sun, friends, massive long hug.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big hugger, and that is something that my body can feel isn't happening.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe that human.
Touch.
Yeah. I get done with every seminar and I go, "I'm a hugger if you're into it." Because some people don't like to hug.
Yeah.
But or feel uncomfortable or whatever. But I'm a hugger and I miss that part. I don't miss everything. I don't mind being a recluse during this time. I know it will wear on me after a while, but I appreciate that the man upstairs, the woman upstairs, whatever someone believes in made us slow down. Like, I think I needed it.
I think everybody's needed it to a certain degree. I and I really appreciate the people on social media that are very positive and put positive things out as opposed to negativity, because nobody needs that right now. And you definitely have done that for everybody, and including all different dance teachers, studio owners, putting different people together. And, even, was it last night, Art and Nancy, and, the way that, you're keeping the community together, and people can actually share the knowledge that they have. And I feel like what you're doing is everybody's really sharing, as opposed to a studio owner at a competition that the kids always win, and how do you do this with their kids, and maybe they don't want to share that. Now everybody is sharing. Everybody that you speak to is sharing everything to help everybody get to a different place in life or feel good about themselves. And I think it's really great that you're doing that. So keep up the good work, Rhee.
Thank
Hey, hey,
Thank
listen, thanks for letting me switch this, because that was just really fun when I was like, why can't I interview you? You interview everybody else. But I think we should do it again. I think it would be fun to do it again.
I will do it again. I will set up a date to do it again. I
Okay.
want to say something about what you just said, though. Know that in these times, having a chance to do the talks with the people that I've been able to talk to, old friends, dance teachers, like, it's diverse. It's my way of making this through, like other people have to dance. I feel like what's keeping me sane is my conversations. I can say that honestly.
Yeah.
It's you know how you walk in the classroom and you lose yourself in the music, or you're doing a rehearsal with one of your celebrities. You can lose yourself in the experience because it's art, it's movement. And for me, these talks are what gets me through the tougher times that we're all experiencing.
Mhm. And you're doing that for everybody else as well, giving them a platform and a voice that everybody can hear them and be entertained by everybody. It's really great.
I love it. I love our life. I love our business. I have some regrets in this life, but I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't, hopefully in the next few interviews, if we have some more, I'll tell you more about the family that I grew up in. I feel like everything along the journey was there for a reason. I
Hmm.
think I had the father I had for a reason, the mother I had for a reason, the kids that I taught, the businesses that I've run. If you follow this life, I know you know this. If you follow this life, you realize that there was a journey that makes sense, but you don't realize it while you're in it. It takes.
Right. Stop and look at it, and then, yeah, it does. And I think that in this time too, it's brought a lot of people closer together. People have more time to jump on phone calls or Zoom, and I think everybody has different days, but I just think it's great that you're keeping the dance community, together and talking with different groups of people, the people that you put together. I think it's great, and I'm glad that you're enjoying your own journey.
I am enjoying the journey, and you made it a little bit more fun today. Thank you for doing this. And we'll do it again. I like turning the tables on Rhee because I don't have to think so much.
Really? I would think that you have to think more because you have to answer the questions.
No, I think the other way around is a little more difficult.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I'll be happy to answer your questions. We can do this for a while. And then when it becomes difficult, we'll cancel this programming.
And we'll put Rennie on, and Rennie will just put in his, I'm not Rhee.
Yes, I have always felt bad about that. I'm not Rhee part.
That's okay.
But I'm proud to be Rhee. I'll end this with that. Um, Growing up as a young dancer and a guy in dance in the 70s wasn't so accepted. I think a part of what made me become who I am was working to be accepted. Even though I was in a lot of places, those people who judged what I did had an impact on me. But now I look back and I'm so grateful for that judgment because look at where it's brought me. Look at what a life it is. You can turn around and be grateful for the moments that were the hardest because you wouldn't have what you had you not been through the moment.
Right. And look at now, even in 2020, I mean, how cool is it to be a male dancer? I mean, all these different TV shows, everything. It's just so great to be a male dancer. So it's definitely, moved in a different direction from what I see and what I feel. I mean, I'm sure everybody has a bit of struggles, but being a male dancer is, as the kids say, it's lit. It's lit.
It's lit. We need to help. Maybe one night we'll do a show on helping some of the older people with the newer language.
Or maybe we should just get some of the younger kids that are in LA that working in the business. That might be fun too.
Okay.
Studios that move to LA at a much younger age. We can talk about this when we're not recording.
Okay. Let's end this. Miss Nancy, thank you so much. I love turning the tables and I look forward to the next time.
But you have to finish with, what is your statement? Enjoy.
All right, I will. Enjoy the journey. And because I never finish when I say I'm going to finish. Those of you that are listening, not easy times. And it's a roller coaster ride daily. Sometimes you can be in an up place and then a down place within an hour. You're not alone in what that feels like. You're not alone in the struggle. The one thing that we do have is this dance thing,
Yep.
this soul thing that connects us all. Thank you, Miss Nancy.
Thank you. And on that note, I got a kickball change out of here.
Awesome. Go do your kickball change before I shut it off. I want.
Give me my slippers. Bye.